Yo, we are back in the game right now. The conversation we had on last episode was so good that I asked all of us to put the exact same clothes on today and come back and film another episode, and everybody wore the same clothes. Let's go. We wanted it to look the same. We didn't want to lose the feeling. But I assure you, today is another day.
A different day.
A very different day.
Yeah.
It is not 5 minutes later. It is a whole nother day.
Yeah.
Amen?
Amen.
All right. Now that we got that out of the way, I'm your host. This is the Voices for KERN podcast, and I'm your co-host and co-moderator with my guy right here, Dylan. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Jovon. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, man. What's new? A lot has changed since we last did the other
last
episode.
5 minutes.
It's a different day. What's new with you, man? Period. How you doing?
Still breathing. Yep.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I'm excited to talk about still talking about the DOJ stuff and see what we can talk about everyone else's experience, not just our own, but like what we saw of our youth, other youth is this topic and stuff.
Yeah, fire.
So,
Last episode we had some really good conversation, and I got to play a little devil's advocate, and Lorenza ripped me up. It was hot. You should have been there. It was another day.
Yeah.
CiCi, the woman, the myth, the legend, the lawyer, the advocate,
Yeah.
the fighter. She's got it all, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy to be back here on another day.
Yeah, I heard that you recently got paid and like was buying everyone McDonald's.
Yeah, like I think it was like the other day, like definitely not like not 5 minutes ago. I definitely did not just give my card to somebody to go get McDonald's.
Yeah. You know the best part of all that when you were like, "Oh, Jovon, you need anything?" And then I was like, "That didn't happen, huh?"
Yeah.
She assumed that I could take care of myself, but I surely cannot. So I'm borrowing $10 from you.
Yeah, I just gave him $30 on Cash App. It's okay.
There you go. She's my girl, man. I'm proud of her. Proud of Dylan. Also proud of this resilient, ferocious, very quiet, but very, very effective woman here. Lorenza, what's up, Lorenza?
Hi, how are you doing? I'm good.
What's new with you?
What's new? Well, I'm on spring break right now, so
Okay.
yeah, right now I'm chilling.
Okay, so what you hitting? You hitting what?
Valencia, Barnes and Noble, the movie.
Okay. Valencia, Barnes and Noble in the movies. That's hot.
It's hot.
I love that. Okay, I was thinking, Mexico.
Mexico. You gonna take me to Mexico?
Time for change.
Time for-
Cannot send you to Mexico. If something happens out there. God knows. Okay, but I myself will go and be old out there. So I'm good. Anyhow, we are in the game. We're talking about the Department of Justice. We're back. For those that don't know, right, we had General Rob Bonta, right, send his team, Efrain Costello, and also Damon Brown, assistant, special assistant to the Attorney General, who came down here, sat and looked us in our face and asked us what we thought about the world. And they
tore it up.
I'm not trying to brag or nothing, but they were the most well-informed youth in the building. And the other youth were doing great too. But
shout out to everybody who helped
shout out to
us. They helped,
Kylie,
they prepped us
Lori.
well.
Shout out to
The
Kylie,
team.
Victor.
Shout out to
Kylie,
them.
Lori. They were amazing.
Shout out
Yeah,
to
we couldn't
them
have done
for
it
not
without
getting
them.
out there. You know how you take your kids to the store and your mom's like, I don't know, it might be a black thing, but she's like, don't embarrass me in there. Right?
That's how Jovon was in the back.
Yeah, exactly.
They know what they talking about.
Exactly. I was about to embarrass y'all and come out on the court and start high-fiving. In your face, other kids. Dunked on you. It's not even supposed to be about that.
It's not a competition.
Yes, it is. Sorry, it's not. I'm tripping. Okay, anyway, I digress. I was just so proud of you guys. You want to say something? Did you hear me in the back? Did you hear me in the back of you guys?
Yeah, let's go. CiCi.
I felt the same. CiCi ate them.
I was so proud of you guys. Oh my
So
god.
insane.
Anyway, all right. So let's jump into the topics. We've been going with shorter podcasts. We try not to go an hour because we know that the attention span of people is like
Very
2
short.
minutes. So we're at least stretching it out to about 30.
Mhm.
Right. With that being said, we talked about last episode, share something you're passionate about fighting for. Okay. So now let's go to number 2. And it says, what are some of the biggest challenges you believe your generation is currently facing in our state? And how do you think the California Department of Justice can better address these issues? And if we have any issues not pertaining to the other 2 or 3 we talked about, I want to hear about those too, so we can give them a little variety. What you got?
So I actually had, prior to the meeting, I had a lot of points that I wanted to make. There was a bunch of different things, and I kind of just like spilled my ideas out on paper in my notebook. I had like 3 or 4 pages of different things.
Fire.
But the one that I did go with was the protection of communities and law enforcement officers. But as of like big challenges that our generation faces, my generation faces, I would say like physical and mental abuse, youth not knowing their rights, drug abuse in the communities, and the lack of city involvement in like community, events and stuff.
Wow.
As far as like outreach, and as I said before, like, city officials and police officers, creating and building positive relationships with community stakeholders. And another thing is also being able to understand the difference between community-oriented policing and problem-oriented policing.
Ooh, talk about it.
So I did some research on the DOJ website and also some other places. Me and Lori kind of tackled that together. Basically, problem-oriented policing helps law enforcement agencies with analytical methods to develop strategies to prevent or reduce community crime. So basically, that's all like the logistical stuff. That's all logistics. That's all database. That's all, when the crime reports come in, people look at that, blah, 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 blah. Community-oriented policing is about relying on the community to tell you what they need, what problems they're facing, and then from there, law enforcement officers come in and take care of that.
So it's like a collaborative effort.
It's like a collaborative effort between the law enforcement and the community, which is why I think it's so important for city officials and law enforcement agencies to have those type of positive relationships with community stakeholders, with people in the communities, with nonprofits, with people who are basically working to tackle the same issues, but we're just doing it on more of like a community level, and they're doing it from more of like a logistics point of view. So I feel like that's really important.
You know what I'd like to see too? I'd like to see some governance around the type of community stakeholders. And it's like, my friend Eric Arias is United Way, but I think when you talk about community, sometimes they'll just be like, okay, well, we're partnering up with United Way to do something. And I sometimes don't think that's as effective because some of their roots don't go as deep as like maybe like ours in this particular space. So I think sometimes they'll partner up with people that's easy to partner up with. But I think to get deeper into these neighborhoods, I think we have to really focus on getting like real grassroots organizations. Kind of like Time for Change or community intervention.
People that are connecting with those areas.
Exactly.
Yeah, like Mothers Against Gang Violence also.
Exactly.
Time for Change,
Exactly.
like groups like that, like partnering with us to,
I do think that those groups have a little deeper roots into the issues. And I think it would be good to see them come in there.
Yeah.
CiCi, you are, I don't know, you might need to be a lawyer, bro. Dang, maybe I'll give you $5
out of the 30
to
I'm
go to
saying.
law school.
Law school?
Yeah. A little small investment. I'll get you a little degree off the internet. Shoot it to you for
I could buy a little $3.99 subscription.
Dylan, man, there were some other issues talked about, or as far as the same question, whatever's on your heart, man. What are you thinking and feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I did talk about this on the last podcast. Just a little recap. It was like one of the biggest challenges I think my generation is facing in California is trusting those trying to protect them, those being law enforcement police officers. And I basically went over how we want to, like how CiCi was saying, we want to break that, I guess, stigma of like calling the police officer to handle this situation. We want to like work together as a collaborative effort and kind of resolve the issues we have together, and not really have it go from like, we don't want it law enforcement versus community. We want community with law enforcement to work upon these issues and stuff like that. But, yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question from a Gen Z standpoint. I'm a millennial, so I'm always asking you the millennial questions. Do you feel like you found your passion for this policing yourself, or do you feel like it was like a super trendy topic that first kind of attracted you to it and then you learned more? Which one do you think?
I would say I found it myself. I've been very passionate about the police. As I talked about last podcast, I've seen a lot of my family members go through, brutality with the police and, being racially profiled and being treated differently. And, whether it's like sex, religion, anything like that, being treated differently, straight up. But as a kid, I never really understood why that was happening. It was just seen as violence to me. But as I grew up and I started seeing people in different communities, different states, I'm looking on TV and seeing somebody with my skin color and my braids. And it's like, they don't really like us. So that kind of like, that's why I kind of wanted to tackle it a little bit more, because it came from a personal standpoint.
How does that affect the psychology of a young Black girl to believe that they don't really like us. How does that feel to you?
It kind of like hits on my self-confidence a little bit, you know, not being able to like trust the people who are meant to be protecting and serving. And especially for an entire community for thousands of years, I want to say like we haven't been treated the way that we're supposed to be treated.
Wow.
And even in this day and age where everything's progressing, you know, technology is progressing, you know, the law is progressing, everything's being updated, but there's still this same type of treatment going on. So I'm like, why is that not changing? But everything else can progress and move forward, but we're stuck in that box still.
That's so deep.
It kind of,
deep, CiCi.
yeah.
I
It
feel like
kind
crying
of.
right now. Love you. I want to jump into immigration real quick. I know that they did specify that it was more of a federal issue, but that there were things they can do. But I want to hear from you guys, particularly from Dylan and Lorenza as well, on, you know, the other kids were talking a little bit about immigration issues too. What were your thoughts on some of the stuff talked around immigration and you know, documentation, DACA rights, whatever the case may be?
Right now I know that it's like kind of like DACA is kind of going down, like they're tearing it apart, and we really don't know what's gonna happen to the people that have DACA at the moment. But what I liked was hearing like our peers talk about you know, what it is like being Mexican American, like going to school.
Which you are, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And going to school, and you know, just the lack of opportunities they feel that they have because of the language barrier. And I found it so interesting. Honestly, it was very heartwarming to see. Like there was a young man there. He did not speak English. He's like, can I speak in Spanish? And they were able to listen to him speak in his language about the issues that were concerning him.
It was beautiful too.
It was amazing, and they would respond to it, translate it so that everybody could hear what he had to say.
Yeah.
So not only were they making sure that he was heard, but that he felt heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really heartwarming.
Yeah,
It
that was
was.
really cool.
Jovon entiende español muy bien. Simple, simple.
He just learned that one phrase.
Wow.
I'll be watching Narcos.
Bilingual.
I'll be watching Narcos.
Bilingual.
Bilingual. Viva la bilingual. Viva la time for change. Okay. Sorry, I'm back. Dylan, running over to you too. That was a great thought, Lorenza. I'm gonna say this with you because I know that how responsible this group is.
Right.
So I'm gonna give you another devil's advocate question. As I hear everybody talk around, I think one of the people on the other side of things, right, learning what the other side thinks and learning how to engage with that. I think it's one thing to know how I disagree with something, but it's another thing to know how I engage with it. So that's why I'm asking that question. Some people say that it's unfair for undocumented people to come and try to want rights and stuff because the whole premise of them being here is illegal in the first place. And they're saying that there's no other platform where you can do something illegal and then access the same rights. And that it's kind of unfair because it leaves the government in a place where you have to continue to let everybody in. And I'm not going to say any of my personal thoughts on this. I just want to know what you think. Where you have to let everybody in to the point where our country ends up like doing worse because of the influx of people, and then they want the same exact rights when they got here through a different means. What do you guys think about that, and what is your response to that? And I'm only asking you guys because I know you're not going to swing on anybody or nothing.
Right.
But what do you think?
Well, I know that my parents, they came to California so that they can give me a future, so I can go to school, so I can go to college, so I can do all these things that they want me to do. Were they really in the wrong to go across to this country for me to give me that secured future and stuff? No, they
Right.
I just want to know who is it unfair to?
Right.
Who's
well, the whole premise of the argument is that it's unfair to the system of law to, if they have a set of rules, to break those rules and still want to receive the same as everyone that is legal.
Fairness.
And so they look at it from a fairness factor, and I think a lot of them are stuck in that.
Yeah.
But I do want to hear what you guys think about it. Lorenzo, you got any thoughts on this?
Oh, that would be like, if it were very black and white, it'd be like, oh, like, you know, you can't come in. But the problem is that it's not.
Exactly.
Really
you know,
nuanced.
there's so
exactly.
much.
Ooh.
The problem
Keep
is
going.
like
Yeah, keep going.
no, yeah. I mean, growing up, like my mother, my parents, both of them crossed the border at a young age, and I had to grow up feeling like I was growing up into different worlds. My first language was Spanish, and now I feel like I'm stronger in English, and that's
Wow.
because of the environment that I grew up in, and that's thanks to the opportunities that they gave me. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with people seeing the situation they're in, knowing it's not going to benefit them, and wanting to do better for themselves. And it's honestly, I've seen so often that people only have a problem from Mexicans crossing the border, but there's a lot of, I want to say, like Italians,
Come on.
people from Britain, like
Come on.
Europe, like they can come and it's not a problem. Like, no, I'm sorry.
I want to touch on that because
Go
I
ahead,
know
get in
a
there.
lot of like people from Africa. I have a lot of Nigerian family members who came here, you know, illegally as well. Like they came here on like a visitor visa and they never went back home.
Mhm.
So
That's the way to do it.
there's
No, I'm just playing.
there's definitely a stigma around Hispanic people coming to
It
this
is.
country,
Yeah,
It is.
especially Mexican American people.
Yes,
like
it is.
I don't understand
2020 really inflamed that up. too.
yeah,
We
I
know
don't
it,
understand why that stigma is only around that group of people. But then again, it comes into play like the racism that, you know, Mexicans face.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I've seen many. Oh my gosh, there's so many Nigerians that I know. Like I know some Cambodians too. Like that had came over here. Like people in my family who have came here from different countries and they're living life. They're living fine. Like the
Trying
government
to
doesn't.
survive.
They don't give them any problems. Like they own houses here. They own cars here. They own companies here. Like they're doing good. But they did not get that same treatment at all.
And you
Wow.
know what's crazy is
Wow.
that there's like a whole reverse side about other side to this because you know it's a problem for Mexicans to come into America,
Yeah.
but there is a lot of well-off Americans traveling, moving to Mexico, working from home,
And it's not a problem.
and it is a problem. There's a lot of locals saying, you know, they're raising the rent.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
Like this is actually like there's people like they're asking the government to get involved because of the amount of Americans coming into Mexico to reap the benefits of low rent, easier access food, you know, and because they're well off, it's easier for them to like buy like houses into like
Right.
better neighborhoods in Mexico,
Yeah.
you know.
Because they're working from home. and stuff.
Exactly.
I've seen a lot of stuff like that, like people moving into places that are like a little bit lower budget and they'll go in and like buy up all the stuff and be like, oh yeah, this is nice. Me living in Mexico for a day in a life. And it's like, it's
No,
it's
they're
not as
affecting the
glamorous as it,
economy.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're
It's
making
like
it seem
romanticizing
glamorous.
it.
Yeah, and it's
exactly.
not like that. Like
No.
you should not. No.
It is. Every people group that's ever been brought to America has been villainized for at least 50 years before they got to be okay. It was like, look at those black people. Let's take them over there. Then do the thing with them. Then 50 years later, it's like, all right, they're cool.
Yeah.
And then the Italian experience that they had when they came on boats a lot, they were treated. They were called very terrible names. They fought for their rights. Look up Mother Saint Cabrini, who was one of the biggest warriors in that movement. And then you have the Mexican, same type of thing where they're coming through. Keeping in mind where we live at right now used to be Mexico.
Yeah, that's very true.
I think it was kind of
Mm.
borrowed
Right.
and not given back.
Yeah.
It's like-
So this premise of America, the Irish, I could go on and on about all these people
Right.
influxes, but now I think to this point, because it's easy to identify Mexico because Mexico's close and it's right there, and some of the stuff that's been said about them really inflamed tension. So you guys made some really good points and arguments. I think you guys are ready to take on the world with these conversations
Right.
because you're not blinded by your anger, but you really want to say something. I think that's fire. That was a good conversation, by the way. What else, if you could change or introduce one law to better support youth in your community, what would it be and why? Yeah.
So
Hit us with the card.
I'm gonna read word for word what I said at the meeting because I don't want to get anything wrong, and I feel like this is a really great point. Something I suggest for the protection of communities and law enforcement officers would be biannual evaluations for police departments. This evaluation would include performance evaluations, psych evaluations, along with making sure officers are continuing their education to stay up to date on policies and penal codes. This is to ensure that officers are feeling up to par physically, emotionally, mentally, and to ensure that they are upholding and fulfilling their oath entirely for their communities.
I like that. You want to elaborate a little bit?
And I basically it's just because I was doing some research on what police officers, what type of trainings and evaluations they get. They only have an initial evaluation at the beginning of their, like how I talked about on last podcast. They have an initial evaluation, you know, they do like the whole scan, make sure you're good mentally, blah, blah, blah. But that was like post pre-COVID, actually. So post-COVID, you know, officers are working through that entire time. They're dealing with a bunch of different people. They're dealing with a bunch of different personalities. They're, you know, sometimes they have to fire their weapons. Sometimes they, you know, an officer, when they're having to deal with somebody who's a little bit too riled up, someone who's mentally unstable, you know, dealing with multiple different personalities, and then having to go back to work the next day after that. You don't know what's going on up here, but you know that person still has a gun in their pocket. So that can lead to so many problems in the community. And like I said, it takes one, you know, straw on the horse's back to knock it over. So you could be their tipping point. Somebody could be dead in your front yard like nothing. Yeah. So I think that that's really important. And I also mentioned it to Mr. Damon Brown. He said that they didn't have biannual evaluations. They have annual trainings, but they don't have evaluations to make sure the officers are up to par physically, emotionally, and mentally.
CiCi's the one that starts the new revolution.
So I was suggesting to him, as my suggestion, as my policy or law or assembly bill, whatever they want to call it, to have, you know, biannual evaluations for the police officers to make sure that everybody's up to par, to make sure that the community is being protected properly, but also these people who are being upheld by society, they're also doing good, and they're doing good for their communities.
That's amazing. What about you, Dylan? What was yours?
I'll read it word for word like CiCi. I believe it's essential for the DOJ to implement legislation or policy changes aimed at enhancing transparency, such as sensitivity trainings or culturally related topics. Such measures would help clarify why Officer Schleich felt comfortable making those statements, and by promoting openness and accountability, those changes would foster greater trust between law enforcement and the community. So again, it's like breaking that wall between law enforcement and the community. And if we can get like these trainings and these other potential solutions to help increase transparency behind the DOJ, then it'll just be beneficial for all, to be honest. But,
Mijo. Escúchame. What you got?
So going back to like the social media and the internet thing that I was asking, like, because the internet it's evolving. It's too much to deal with sometimes. So it's understandable that like they wouldn't be able to do much about it. But I did bring up to, when I was talking to Damon Brown afterwards, I asked him questions and I told him, I'm like, Florida just passed a bill. This said that 14-year-olds that have social media accounts, they're going to be blocked after a specific date. They're just not allowed to have social media. And I was like, that's interesting that a state can regulate that just for their state. Now, I disagree that we need to go to that extent, because that shows distrust in our youth that they can't use. And they're going to be using these tools, you know, for seeing how integrated it is in our lives. They're going to be using it. Yeah. So I think that while we should trust our youth, if it's possible, maybe it can be implemented that people have to register social media accounts the way one would register a car. Because that used to not happen. People used to not have to register their cars. Oh, wow. So that way you could verify, you know, your identity. They can crack down on fake accounts. They can crack down on just the dangers that are present to children. On top of that, I also said...
Isn't that what the IP address is for, though? To track?
I think IP address is more like to track like the specific device you're using.
Yeah, but you can
and even then you can manipulate that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Otherwise, there's also we could introduce a law that makes it not possible to publicly share photos or information of minors online. You know, growing up, you know, I did not have my baby pictures on the internet. That was very intimate. That was like at home in a photo album.
And for family, yeah.
You know, for family, not for like, you know, whoever in Wisconsin to see. Like, why do they need to know about, you know, what I'm doing or who I am? But other than that, like they were just ideas.
Because somewhere somebody's using this sweet face to get a date. It ain't even me.
I know.
They're trying to catfish through your boy. That ain't right. No. So if he would have had registered, they would have took him in.
As soon as this episode's over, we're gonna see Jovon Dangerfield.
I go face to face with him. You're not me. Come back. You guys brought the heat again. All of these topics. And then diving into policing, diving into immigration and your thoughts. It was really well spoken. And I really want, here's my dream before we go. I really want to see both sides come together. Republicans, Democrats, young, old, millennial, baby boomer, and have these conversations and leave with a better understanding of each other. That's all. You ain't got to be right, you ain't got to be wrong, you just get heard. I think everybody deserves that. You guys killed it today. You guys are dope. Dylan, CiCi, Lorenza, Jovon. Adios.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
Voy a volver.